You're not tired, you're stuck, you're not unlucky, you're undisciplined. Most people won't fail because they lack talent. They'll fail because they refuse to let go. And 2026 will expose that truth without mercy. You're holding on and you know it's killing you. You feel it when you wake up heavy. You hear it in your chest when you say, I'm fine. But your spirit knows you're lying. You keep calling it loyalty. You keep calling it patience. But the truth, it's fear dressed up as commitment. See, most people don't fail because life is too hard. They fail because they stay loyal to what's breaking them. They stay loyal to habits that drain them, loyal to environments that shrink them, loyal to people who only love the version of them that doesn't grow. And 2026 doesn't care how long you've been suffering. It doesn't care how much history you have with your pain. It only asks one question: are you willing to move, or are you willing to stay stuck? Let me tell you something you don't want to hear, but need to hear. Just because you've been somewhere a long time doesn't mean you belong there. Just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's right. And just because walking away hurts doesn't mean staying won't hurt more. Some of you are loyal to jobs that steal your soul. You say, at least it pays the bills. But every day it costs you your peace, your creativity, your fire. You're surviving, but you're not alive. And deep down, you know it. Some of you are loyal to people who only clap when you play small. The moment you start talking growth, discipline, change, they get uncomfortable. They remind you who you used to be. They joke about your dreams. They keep you anchored to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. And here's the hard truth. Not everyone who's been with you can go with you. Not everyone who started the journey deserves the destination. That doesn't make you cold. That makes you conscious. See, loyalty is powerful, but misplaced loyalty is dangerous. Loyalty without self-respect becomes self-destruction. You can't keep bleeding and calling it love. You can't keep drowning and calling it loyalty. There comes a moment in every person's life where God, life, destiny, whatever you believe in, taps you on the shoulder and says, enough. Enough explaining yourself. Enough sacrificing your future to protect your comfort. Enough staying because leaving scares you. Because let me tell you something, fear doesn't disappear when you stay, it multiplies. Staying costs you more than leaving ever will. Staying costs you years. Staying costs you momentum. Staying costs you the person you were born to become. And most people never make the move. They complain, they pray, they hope, but they don't decide. They want change without separation. They want growth without grief. They want a new life without letting the old one die. But growth requires a funeral. Something has to end. You don't walk into a new season dragging dead weight. You don't climb higher carrying what was only meant for a lower level. You don't become unstoppable while holding on to what weakens you. This is why most people fail in 2026, not because they weren't warned, not because they weren't capable, but because they chose comfort over calling. Hear me clearly. Moving on doesn't mean you hate what you're leaving. It means you love yourself enough to stop breaking for it. It means you finally decide that your future deserves more than your past. And when you make that decision, it won't be loud. It won't be dramatic. It'll be quiet. Just you standing in truth, saying, I can't live like this anymore. That's where power is born. That's where momentum starts. That's where chains break. You don't need permission to move on. You don't need validation. You don't need everyone to understand. You just need courage. Because the moment you stop being loyal to what's breaking you is the moment you start being faithful to what can build you. And if you don't make that move, if you keep choosing what's familiar over what's faithful, 2026 won't destroy you. You're too comfortable, and that's the problem. Not broken, not defeated, not incapable, comfortable. And comfort will quietly steal everything you prayed for if you let it. See, nobody warned you that comfort doesn't feel like danger. It feels like relief. It feels like rest. It feels like I'll do it tomorrow, but tomorrow keeps moving and you keep standing still. 2026 is not a year that rewards comfort. It exposes it. It puts pressure on it. It reveals who's been preparing and who's been coasting. Most people won't fail loudly this year. They'll fail softly, slowly, comfortably. They'll wake up, do just enough, avoid discomfort, and go back to sleep thinking life is fair. But life isn't fair. Life responds to discipline. Let me break this down. Comfort is when you stop pushing because things aren't falling apart. Comfort is when you mistake stability for progress. Comfort is when you say, at least it's not that bad, instead of asking, is this who I'm supposed to be? Some of you survived chaos, and now peace feels like the finish line. But peace is not the destination, it's the platform. You were supposed to build from here, not camp here. Comfort whispers lies. It says, you've done enough. It says you deserve a break. It says everybody else is doing the same thing, but comfort never tells you the cost. The cost is urgency. The cost is hunger. The cost is the edge that made you dangerous when you had nothing. See, when life was hard, you were focused. When money was tight, you were creative. When nobody believed in you, you worked like your life depended on it. Now things are okay, and you're losing your fire. That's how comfort kills dreams, not with pain, but with ease. Let me tell you something real. While you're getting comfortable, someone else is getting disciplined. While you're resting in potential, someone else is building skill. While you're explaining why now isn't the time, someone else is showing up tired, scared, and committed. And eventually, discipline outruns talent every time. Comfort hates discipline because discipline requires discomfort. Discipline asks you to wake up early when your bed feels good. Discipline asks you to say no when your friends don't understand. Discipline asks you to push when quitting would feel justified. And most people won't do it, not because they can't, but because they won't. They don't want to feel uncomfortable again. They don't want to struggle again. They don't want to risk feeling foolish again. But hear this, the pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. You think comfort is protecting you, but it's delaying you. You think you're being patient, but you're being passive. You think you're waiting on the right moment, but the moment is waiting on you. There's a version of you that only shows up under pressure. There's a level of focus you only reach when excuses are gone. There's a strength you haven't met yet because comfort keeps getting in the way. And 2026, it's not slowing down for you to get ready. It's not lowering the standard because you're tired. It's demanding a higher level whether you prepare or not. This is where most people lose. They don't lose to failure. They lose to ease. They choose the couch over the craft. They choose sleep over sacrifice. They choose entertainment over execution. And they wonder why their life looks the same year after year. Let me say this with love and truth. If your life doesn't demand discipline right now, you need to create it. If nobody is pushing you, you need to push yourself. If nothing feels uncomfortable, you're not growing. Growth lives on the other side of inconvenience. Breakthrough lives on the other side of boredom. Excellence lives on the other side of saying, I don't feel like it. Comfort didn't wake you up when you were hungry. Comfort didn't keep you going when nobody was watching. Discomfort did. So don't let comfort make you forget who you had to become to survive. Because if you stay comfortable in 2026, life won't punish you. You're trying to step into a new future wearing an old name. You want new results, but you keep answering to who you used to be. And that right there is why most people don't make it. Because the hardest thing in growth isn't doing new things. It's letting go of who you've been long enough to become who you're called to be. See, you can't build a new life with an old identity. You can't expect elevation while clinging to labels that were formed in survival mode. You learned how to survive, and that version of you did its job. But survival was never the destination. Some of you are still operating like the old you was in charge. The broke you, the scared you, the insecure you. The version of you that had to play small to stay safe. That version got you through hell, but hear me clearly, it will not take you to heaven. And the tension you feel right now, that discomfort, that restlessness, that's not confusion. That's the new you knocking on the door while the old you refuses to move out. You say you want more discipline, more confidence, more impact, but every time life asks you to show up differently, you retreat to what's familiar. You keep talking like the old you. You keep thinking like the old you. You keep making decisions based on old fears. And then you wonder why nothing changes. Let me tell you something most people won't tell you. Your old identity is comfortable because it's predictable. It knows its limits. It knows its excuses. It knows how to stay out of trouble. But greatness requires a new language, a new standard, a new level of self-respect. You can't pray your way into a new life while behaving like the old you. You can't declare growth and then defend dysfunction. You can't ask for abundance and keep thinking in scarcity. At some point, you have to fire the old version of yourself. And that's scary because the old you is who people recognize. The old you is who your circle is comfortable with. The old you is who doesn't make waves. But the new you disrupts rooms. The new you sets boundaries. The new you says no without explaining. The new you shows up early, stays late, and doesn't apologize for wanting more. And when you start changing, people will say, you've changed, like it's an insult. But growth always looks like betrayal to people who benefit from you staying the same. Here's the hard truth. Some of you are loyal to an identity that no longer fits. You've outgrown the mindset, but you keep wearing it because it's familiar, like old shoes that hurt your feet but feel wrong to throw away. And 2026 is not the year to be confused about who you are. It's not the year to hesitate. It's not the year to keep one foot in the past and one foot in possibility. This year demands clarity. Who are you becoming? Not who you were, not who they say you are. Who are you choosing to be? Because every level requires a different version of you. What worked at level 1 will fail you at level 2. What got you attention early will cost you respect later. You don't rise by accident. You rise by alignment. Alignment between your habits and your vision. Alignment between your words and your actions. Alignment between who you say you are and how you live when nobody's watching. And let me be honest with you. There will be days when the old you tries to come back, days when you want to quit, days when discipline feels unnatural. That doesn't mean you're fake. It means you're transforming. Transformation is uncomfortable because it requires death. Something has to die for something greater to live. The old excuses have to die. The old thinking has to die. The old limits have to die. And most people won't let it happen. They'll protect the old self and sacrifice the future self. But not you. Not if you're listening to this right now. You don't need permission to evolve. You don't need approval to upgrade. You don't need to explain your growth to people who aren't growing. You just need to decide. Decide that the old you did enough. Decide that the next level requires a new identity. Decide that comfort is no longer your compass, purpose is. Because if you keep asking the old you to build a new life, you'll keep getting old results. And 2026 won't wait for you to figure it out. It will reward the ones who had the courage to become someone new, even when it felt lonely, even when it felt unfamiliar, even when it felt like everything was on the line. That's the cost. That's the calling. And that's the line most people won't cross. You're not stuck because you lack opportunity. You're stuck because you're emotionally attached to what already ended. You keep reaching backward, hoping the past will comfort you, while the future is waiting for you to let go. And that attachment, it's costing you more than you realize. Most people don't stay broke, drained, or stuck because they don't know better. They stay there because they feel too much. They remember how it used to be. They remember the good days. They remember the version of people, places, and habits that no longer exist. And instead of grieving and moving forward, they keep reopening wounds and calling it loyalty. Let me tell you something hard and real. Emotional attachment can keep you financially broke. It can keep you mentally exhausted. It can keep you spiritually empty. Because every time you miss what's gone, you invest energy into something that can't pay you back. Some of you miss people who only supported you when you stayed small. Some of you miss habits that felt good but destroyed your discipline. Some of you miss seasons that were comfortable even though you weren't growing. And you don't realize it, but that missing, that reminiscing, that emotional attachment, it's stealing your focus. You can't build tomorrow while crying over yesterday. Hear me clearly. The past is not evil, but it is expired, and expired things don't nourish you, they poison you. But because it's familiar, you keep consuming it. You scroll through old conversations, you replay old memories, you replay old failures, you replay old versions of yourself, and every replay pulls you further away from who you're becoming. That's why some of you feel tired without doing anything. You're emotionally exhausted. You're carrying people who aren't present. You're carrying regret that can't be changed. You're carrying guilt that was never yours to hold. And 2026 is not a year that allows emotional hoarding. This year demands clarity. This year demands focus. This year demands emotional discipline. Because you don't lose the future all at once. You lose it slowly by holding on. Holding on to conversations you should have closed. Holding on to relationships that stop growing. Holding on to mindsets that no longer serve you. And then you ask, why am I not moving forward? Because your hands are full. Let me paint this picture for you. You can't grab a new opportunity if both hands are clutching the past. You can't receive a new blessing if you're still hugging old pain. You can't run forward while looking backward. And some of you are emotionally addicted to familiarity. You'd rather deal with known pain than unknown growth. You'd rather replay old hurt than risk new responsibility. But here's the truth. What you're attached to is not coming back. And even if it did, it wouldn't fit who you're becoming. The version of you that survived that season is not the version meant to lead the next one. You don't miss the past. You miss how safe it felt. You don't miss the person. You miss who you were around them. You don't miss the habit. You miss the escape. But escape is not purpose. comfort is not calling, and nostalgia is not a strategy. At some point, you have to stop romanticizing what broke you, because emotional attachment has a price. It costs you discipline, it costs you decision making, it costs you momentum, and most people pay that price every single day quietly. They wake up thinking about what was, they move through the day half present, they go to sleep wondering what went wrong, and 2026 keeps moving, with or without them. Let me say this in love and truth. You are allowed to remember, but you are not allowed to live there. You are allowed to appreciate, but you are not allowed to stay. You are allowed to grieve, but you are not allowed to build a home in grief. Closure is not something someone gives you. Closure is something you decide. You decide to stop reopening doors life already closed. You decide to stop explaining your growth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You decide to stop carrying emotional weight that keeps you weak. Because strength isn't pretending it didn't hurt. Strength is admitting it hurt and moving anyway. And this is why most people fail in 2026. They keep looking back, hoping the past will change, while the future is waiting for focus, discipline, and emotional maturity. You don't need to erase the past, you need to release it. Because the moment you let go emotionally, your mind gets clearer, your decisions get sharper, your energy comes back. And that's when movement happens. That's when growth happens. That's when life finally meets you where you are instead of where you used to be. If you don't release what's behind you, you'll spend all of 2026 remembering while someone else is becoming. Discipline feels heavy right now, and that's why most people run from it. It burns, it demands, it doesn't care how you feel today. But hear me, discipline is heavy now, so regret doesn't bury you later. See, nobody tells you this part. Nobody posts this part, the part where you wake up tired and still move, the part where nobody claps, the part where progress is quiet and lonely and slow. That's the weight of discipline, and most people drop it because they think the weight means something is wrong. No, the weight means something is being built. Most people choose the lighter option, sleep instead of sacrifice, comfort instead of commitment, excuses instead of execution, and it feels good for a while. But life keeps receipts. That skipped workout shows up as weak health. That ignored opportunity shows up as regret. That undisciplined year shows up as a stuck decade. Regret is patient. It waits until you're older, until you're tired, until you realize time didn't slow down just because you weren't ready. Discipline hurts now, regret hurts later. Choose your pain. Let me make this real for you. Discipline is saying no when everything in you wants to say yes. Discipline is showing up when nobody would blame you for quitting. Discipline is staying focused when distraction is easier and more accepted. And most people don't lack motivation. They lack tolerance for discomfort. They want results without resistance. They want growth without grind. They want success without sacrifice. But that's not how life works. Life doesn't reward intentions. It rewards consistency. You don't wake up disciplined. You become disciplined one hard decision at a time. One early alarm, one uncomfortable conversation, one choice to keep going when quitting feels reasonable. And hear this, discipline is not punishment. It's protection. It protects your future from your moods. It protects your goals from your excuses. It protects your destiny from your comfort. But you've been taught to avoid pain at all costs. So when discipline shows up demanding structure, routine, boundaries, you call it stress. No, that's structure trying to save you. Let me tell you what regret feels like. Regret is heavier than discipline ever was. Regret is waking up knowing you had time and wasted it. Regret is knowing you had ability and didn't use it. Regret is seeing someone else live the life you talked yourself out of. Discipline asks for hours. Regret asks for years. Discipline asks for effort. Regret asks for your peace. And most people won't understand this until it's too late. They'll say, I wish I should have started. If only I stayed consistent. But wishing doesn't rewind time, and guilt doesn't build futures. 2026 is not forgiving hesitation. It's not waiting on confidence. It's rewarding the ones who show up even when they feel unqualified, unmotivated, and unseen. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It cares who you're becoming. Some of you keep negotiating with your goals. I'll start when things slow down. I'll be disciplined when I feel ready. I'll lock in after one more break. But discipline doesn't respond to someday. It responds to now. Now is when habits are formed. Now is when character is built. Now is when futures are decided quietly, daily, repeatedly. You don't need more hype. You need more structure. You don't need another motivational quote. You need standards you refuse to break. Because when life gets hard, and it will, motivation disappears, emotion fades, feelings change. but discipline stays. Discipline is what keeps you moving when passion runs out. Discipline is what keeps you honest when nobody's watching. Discipline is what separates people who dream from people who deliver. And here's the truth most people avoid. If discipline feels heavy, it's because you're lifting something meaningful. Nobody complains about the weight of things they don't care about. Your future has weight. Your calling has weight. Your potential has weight. Stop putting it down just because your arms are tired. Strength doesn't come from avoiding the load. It comes from carrying it long enough to grow. You won't always feel disciplined. You won't always feel strong. You won't always feel motivated. But if you stay disciplined anyway, one day you'll wake up lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And that's the difference. Most people choose ease now and regret later. A few choose discipline now and freedom later. 2026 will expose who chose what. And when the year is over, you won't be judged by what you said you wanted. You'll be standing in the results of what you were disciplined enough to do. Carry the weight now, or be crushed by regret later. You think moving on means you failed. You think letting go means you lost. You think walking away means you quit. That lie has kept more people stuck than fear ever has. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop bleeding for something that will never heal you. Hear me, moving on is not weakness. It's not betrayal. It's not giving up. Moving on is choosing yourself when everything in you was taught to abandon yourself for approval. Most people were raised to endure, to tolerate, to stay quiet, to stay loyal, even when loyalty costs them their sanity, their future, their soul. So they stay in rooms they've outgrown. They stay in relationships that shrink them. They stay in habits that slowly suffocate their potential, and they call it strength. No, that's survival, and survival has an expiration date. Let me tell you something that might hurt before it heals. Some doors don't close because you failed. They close because you finally learned. Some seasons don't end because you weren't enough. They end because you became too much for a place that needed you small. But we've been conditioned to think endurance is always noble, that if you just hold on longer, things will change. But there comes a moment when holding on is no longer faith. It's fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of disappointing people, fear of starting over. And that fear keeps people chained to lives they were never meant to finish in. 2026 is not a year for half commitments. It's not a year for quiet suffering. It's not a year for staying where your spirit is dying just to look strong. This year demands honesty. Honesty about what's no longer working. Honesty about who you've become. Honesty about what is costing you to stay. Because staying has a cost. It costs you sleep. It costs you joy. It costs you clarity. It costs you years you will never get back. And most people never count that cost. They only count the cost of leaving. They say, what will people think? What if I'm wrong? What if it doesn't work out? But they never ask, what if I stay and nothing changes? What if I stay and miss who I could have been? What if I stay and teach myself that my needs don't matter? Let me be clear. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's stewardship. You are responsible for the life you wake up to every day. You are responsible for the energy you bring home. You are responsible for the example you set, especially for the version of you watching quietly from the future. Moving on means you finally stop asking for permission to live in alignment, and it won't be celebrated. Let me tell you that up front. People who benefited from your silence will call you difficult. People who depended on your sacrifice will call you selfish. People who fear growth will call you disloyal. Let them talk. They weren't the ones lying awake at night. They weren't the ones carrying the weight. They weren't the ones paying the emotional bill. You were. And at some point, you have to decide, will I keep choosing what's familiar, or will I choose what's faithful to who I'm becoming? Because the truth is, moving on doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop destroying yourself to prove you care. It means you draw a line and say, I can love this and still leave. I can appreciate this and still outgrow it. I can honor the past without living there. That takes courage, real courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind where you wake up one day and say, I'm done negotiating with my worth. I'm done explaining my pain. I'm done shrinking to keep peace. And when you make that decision, everything won't fall into place immediately. You'll feel lonely. You'll feel unsure. You'll question yourself. That's normal. Growth feels like grief because something is dying, the version of you that stayed too long. But on the other side of that grief is clarity. On the other side is energy. On the other side is a version of you that doesn't need permission to breathe. Most people never experience that freedom. They stay trapped by the fear of quitting. But hear this, walking away from what's breaking you is not quitting. Quitting is knowing something is killing you and staying anyway. Quitting is betraying your future to protect your comfort. Quitting is ignoring the voice inside you that's been begging for change. Moving on is obedience to truth, to growth, to purpose. And 2026 will review had the courage to choose themselves, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, decisively. Because the moment you choose yourself, your life stops asking for permission. And from that moment forward, everything changes. Most people won't make that move. But if you do, you won't just survive 2026.